The stock market, Frank had done his own research. And as a result, he continued to warn us not to invest in those companies and forecasted that the dot-com bubble was about to burst. He published these warnings and spoke about it repeatedly at Melaleuca meetings. And just 12 months later, the dot-com bubble burst and investors lost trillions of dollars. Hundreds of internet companies went out of business and the NASDAQ lost 78% of its value. It was the biggest stock market crash since the Great Depression. Tens of thousands of household fortunes were destroyed. But those who followed Frank's advice did not lose a penny. Now, fast forward to September of 2005, when Frank identified some concerning trends about the housing boom. In fact, he was so concerned for this Melaleuca family, he went on the road and visited several cities in person, where he warned Melaleuca marketing executives of the dangers of variable rate mortgages. He specifically warned of a bubble in the housing market and forecasted it would soon burst. He warned of foreclosures and boldly stated that banks could potentially fail. Then he even wrote an article in the November 2005 Leadership in Action warning of the housing market bubble. He gave counsel to avoid variable rate mortgages, to pay off your home, invest wisely, and have some dependable supplemental income. And 8 months after this article, the housing market peaked. And not long after, banks started foreclosing on hundreds of thousands of mortgages. Housing prices began to plummet, and the housing bubble burst. And over the next few years, 10 million families were foreclosed on, 10 million, and millions more were impacted. Lives were completely destroyed. Everything families had worked for was gone. And Frank was right, the federal government even had to step in and rescue several banks. And Frank predicted the whole thing at the end of 2005 when no one else was talking about it. These effects were felt for over a decade. But those who heeded Frank's counsel were well prepared and thrived during the biggest economic crisis in modern history. And now, just 7 weeks ago, Frank warned us again. Let's take a look.
I feel our nation is in danger, grave danger, in danger of never being the same again, in danger of financial disaster. I'm talking to you about this today because I don't think it's too late to change directions. But America will not change directions if we all remain silent. Small businesses all over this country are failing. They are struggling to find employees. Because of this, many are close to failure and closing their doors forever. But unbelievably, even though jobs are plentiful, the federal government is now paying people not to go back to work. As a result, many small businesses are having to close because they don't have enough employees. And if they don't reopen soon, they will need to file bankruptcy and will be closed forever. Many of these businesses are critical for the supply lines and thousands of essential elements of our economy. These supply lines are already drying up. Hundreds of manufacturers cannot produce products because of a shortage of computer chips and because of a shortage of employees. They cannot make cars or trucks or tractors or refrigerators. Major supply lines were originally damaged because of the pandemic, but now they're being damaged irreparably because the federal government is paying people not to go to work at factories. When our federal government gets involved in trying to solve problems, they just create a bigger mess. They may mean well, but they are creating a disaster. And according to news reports, they are soon going to make it a lot worse by dumping trillions, I think it's $3.5 trillion what they're talking about today, dumping trillions of more dollars into social programs that will incent people not to get a job. Unless we get this stopped in the next few weeks, I'm predicting two consequences that are sure to happen. First, we're going to be confronted with many shortages of supply that this nation has never seen since the Great Depression. Second, we're going to see inflation like we've never experienced inflation in our lifetime. So I'm inviting you to exercise your influence on your U.S. senators and your U.S. representatives. Tell them, ask them, to stop providing subsidies that encourage people not to get a job. Unfortunately, even if we get people back to work and keep our supply lines open, inflation is already on its way. It's just a question of how bad it's going to be. Based on what the business world is already seeing, I think it's going to be pretty bad. If the supply lines close up, we'll have these major shortages and even more serious inflation. Yes, I know. The pundits are telling us not to worry. The economy is booming, they tell us. And indeed, if you look at the numbers, household income appears to be on the rise. But that's before you calculate the impact of inflation. Because our government has just printed trillions of dollars and poured them into the economy, people are making more, but it's worth less. And soon the US dollar will be worth much less. I think it's going to get serious. The government statistics on inflation lags months behind what is currently going on. Inflation is much greater than they're telling us. So you might ask, if things are this bad, why are we not hearing about this in the press? Please understand, the press only reports what has happened. The press never reports what's going to happen. I'm telling you what's going to happen. It's not hard to figure out. The evidence is all around us. Just ask any employer in your town if they're having trouble finding workers, and then ask them why. They will tell you it's because of the government subsidies. Please understand, I'm not criticizing any one political party or any individual. I am criticizing the decisions that they're making collectively. I realize that some will say that I should just run the business and keep my head down and my mouth shut. But what is happening in our country right now is so frightening that we all have to speak up. We have to choose leaders who do not believe that the government is the solution. We are the solution. Each one of us, individually and collectively. We are responsible for our own family. We are responsible for our own well-being. With the economic difficulties coming our way, the world is going to need Melaleuca more than ever. And we are prepared. We own all of our own factories. We have no debt whatsoever. We can weather any storm. We're shoring up our supply lines. We already manufacture most of our own products, and we are moving much of our bottle manufacturing and component manufacturing in-house.
7 weeks ago, when we did that broadcast, the experts were not talking about inflation or supply chain. The pundits are still telling us there's nothing to worry about. In fact, last week, Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen said exactly that. Here's what she said.
We're being advised now to shop now for the holidays because of these supply chain issues. What's your message to consumers?
Well, look, we have an economy that's recovering, so there may be isolated shortages of goods and services in the coming months, but there is an ample supply of goods, and I think there's no reason for consumers to panic about the absence of goods that they're going to want to acquire at Christmas.
Today, just 1 week after she said that, we are experiencing the opposite of what she told us. Everywhere we turn, we're seeing exactly what Frank said would happen. Now, Frank insists he's not a guru. He does not have a crystal ball. He simply doesn't follow the trends and fads to predict the future, but uses statistics coupled with common sense to see around corners to prepare for what's inevitably coming, regardless of what the pundits are telling us. And once again, those who are paying attention will be equipped to thrive during a time with more confusion and noise than ever before. And today, he has an update. Here's Frank.
Hello. Thanks for tuning in. These are exciting times. Melaleuca is on track for the best year in our history in the United States and Canada. We have averaged over 96.5% retention rate this year. And the last few months, our customer retention rate has been 97%. That means 97% of all those who ordered last month will order again this month. For decades, we've touted the unmatched 95% retention rate, unheard of anywhere in any company. Then that increased to 96%. And now, based on the last 6 months, it appears that we're up to 96.5%, and perhaps now even 97%. There's never been a better time to build a Melaleuca business. We have now paid over $6.5 billion in commissions, and these dollars were paid to families just like yours. All of this has been fueled by an increased demand for the absolute best wellness products in the world. This graph shows the progress of Melaleuca in just North America since our beginning. Pretty impressive, right? I've often said that the best presentation might be just to show somebody this graph and ask them, do you want to be part of something like this? Even though our growth has been impressive year after year, this last year has been absolutely mind-blowing. We set new records in both retention and new customers. It's almost unbelievable to me that during a pandemic, when thousands of companies have been closing down, Melaleuca is having its best year ever. That's because Melaleuca is the answer to people's prayers. People want to live longer, more vibrant, and more healthy lives. They want a strong immune system, and they want a secure second income. I think it's time for us to realize that this COVID virus is here to stay. We're all likely to get it sooner or later. We're learning that even vaccines and natural immunity don't last all that long. People who are vaccinated can still get the virus, and people who have had it before can get it again. And there will be likely new varieties and new variants from time to time, just like there are with the flu each year. And in the future, we're likely to have the flu season, the cold season, and the COVID season. The good news is that some experts are telling us that it's really not the flu season and the cold season. It's the vitamin D deficiency season. In other words, having the proper nutrition can help us avoid getting sick with some of these viruses. It's very good news, I think, that vitamin D, zinc, probiotics, vitamin C, and other antioxidants can evidently reduce the likelihood that we'll come down with a virus when the virus comes to town. That's really good news. And this we know for sure. We know that this virus treats people differently depending on the strength of their immune system. Some people get the virus and they can't even tell they got it. Others just get the sniffles. Yet others have long-term effects, and some actually die. Apparently, the biggest difference in how people respond to getting the virus is the strength of their immune system. And no company has the kind of powerful, natural, and scientifically proven immune response products that Melaleuca has. People are beginning to know that. That's the biggest reason that here in the US and Canada, Melaleuca is experiencing the best year we've ever had. It's because we have the solution. And in addition to our phenomenal health-promoting products, people know now more than ever that they need a plan B to sustain their finances in case their current job goes away. They are learning that they need residual income that keeps coming month after month, no matter what. The kind of residual income that only Melaleuca can provide in these uncertain times. While Melaleuca is growing at a phenomenal rate in the US and Canada, we're in an uncertain world and an uncertain time. There's political and social unrest domestically and internationally. I want you to know that I love this country. I love America. I'm grateful for the opportunity that this country has provided for average people like you and me to get ahead in life. I'm a believer in the free enterprise system. The fact that I could grow up in the conditions that I grew up in and be in the financial situation that I find myself in today is just amazing to me. And I often reflect on the fact that my father struggled financially. During the Depression, he worked for $1 a day. Later, he became just a laborer on the railroad. And when I was young, he never brought more than $300 a month home to our family. Times were tough. I grew up sleeping in the attic of my parents' tiny 900-square-foot farmhouse. And yet, I was still able to go on to college, to get a great job, climb the corporate ladder, and eventually start a business. And now my family is blessed beyond anything I could ever imagine. Only in a free enterprise system do stories like that happen. I grew up in Idaho. in Idaho were scrappy. You know, Melaleuca's here in Idaho also. And in Idaho, we're scrappy. Regardless of our circumstances, we never consider ourselves victims. America's always rewarded people who take charge of their own circumstances. Throughout America's history, we've always celebrated heroes, not victimhood. We could all claim to be victims, but that's not what we should be celebrating. We should be focusing on the things that we can do. I've always been a champion of the little guy. I believe in lifting people up and then teaching them to stand on their own. I believe there's great value in teaching people to fish rather than just giving them fish. I believe in rewarding productivity rather than complacency. I never pass up someone who needs help, but we're not done giving help until we teach them to provide for their own family rather than depend on others to take care of them. At Melaleuca, we do not redistribute wealth. We redistribute opportunity. Unfortunately, I believe that today's America is in trouble. Nations that distribute opportunity thrive. Nations that try to redistribute wealth, in the end, always create poverty. History has proven that over and over. I'm sure that you've all noticed that there are great divisions within our nation today. Many politicians and even some news media are trying to get us to take sides against each other and even have ill feelings towards each other simply because we're different from each other or because we disagree with one another. They teach us that we should deem each other enemies and actually hate one another if we don't agree on all things. Recently, I've seen far too many families and friendships split up because people simply disagreed on things like politics or mask mandates or vaccines and so forth. These are important issues that we need to be able to discuss and talk about safely without taking offense and without retribution. People who disagree with us are not our enemy. They may be our best friend. They may be our spouse. They may be our brother or our sister or our neighbor. Let's listen to what they have to say. How can we seek solutions together without amicable discussions? Here at Melaleuca, we don't listen to those who are trying to get us to hate each other. We respect and value all people, regardless of their economic status, their gender, the color of their skin, or any other differences we might have. Melaleuca is truly a family made up of all types of diversity. We come from different educational backgrounds, different political parties, different ethnic groups, different religions, and different countries of origin. Our many differences are what make each one of us special. In fact, just like all families, we can even disagree with each other and still love each other and be the absolute best of friends. We care about each other. We look out for each other, and we stick up for each other. And because we work together, we can find solutions that serve humanity and create harmony in the world rather than create divisions. At Melaleuca, we seek truth regardless of where it's found. At Melaleuca, we have a saying, the truth is good enough. We value truth. Whether it's good news or bad news, we simply want to know the truth. And in today's world, truth is hard to find. We're keenly aware that our national news coverage is completely different depending on which news channel we tune into and depending on what political party that news channel is supporting. And because the facts regarding viruses and vaccines and the economy seem to keep changing from day to day, we've learned to consult our own experts and our own analysts in our relentless journey to sift facts from fiction and find the simple truth. We've learned to trust our own eyes and our own experience more than we trust the politically driven agenda of any news media or almost any journalist. And I'm sure you realize the media just talks about what has happened. We're even more interested in what's going to happen. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. 2 months ago at our company broadcast, I told you that inflation was going to be much worse than anyone was and is telling us. I also warned that the U.S. is going to have supply chain issues that are going to exacerbate the situation and cause food shortages and other shortages that will cause inflation to increase at a more rapid rate than almost anyone is anticipating. At the time I said that, very few people were talking about inflation, and no one was talking about supply chain shortages. Now, finally, almost 2 months later, the news media has woken up and everyone seems to be talking about supply chain. I'm telling you that it's going to be a lot worse than they're suggesting. I think it's important for each of us as individuals to get ahead of this. We don't have to be victims of the situation because we have the solution. And once we realize that we can take control of our own lives and actually prosper during these tough economic times, it can make all the difference in our lives. We're not going to take advantage of any individual, but we're going to take advantage of the situation. At Melaleuca, we've got a pretty good track record of seeing around corners, getting out ahead of things, and taking advantage of tough situations. Several weeks before the pandemic hit the shores of America, we were out ahead of it. Long before anyone else saw it coming, we ordered 82 truckloads of alcohol and several truckloads of Time Oil so that we could have disinfectants and hand sanitizers that we anticipated would be in high demand. And for the next several months, Melaleuca had hand sanitizers and disinfectants that no one else in the country had. We even had to supply several government agencies with our supply of hand sanitizers because they simply couldn't get it anywhere else. In the ensuing 12 months, our membership grew by over 100,000 customers just in America alone, and our annual revenues in America grew by $120 million over the previous year. That's because these times were created for us. People didn't want to shop at stores. They wanted to order on the internet. They wanted to have a strong immune system. They wanted wellness products. And since many were losing their jobs and thousands of companies were going out of business, they wanted a plan B, where they could have a secure source of residual income. It's as if the situation was made for us, because we had the solution to every one of those issues. But in order to take advantage of this situation, we had to act. So we got after it. More than 120 Melaleuca computer programmers and analysts and technicians went immediately to work day and night to build systems and networks where our employees could work from home. We supplied our employees with computers and headsets so that they could work out of their own homes, and over 1,000 employees began almost immediately, just within a few short weeks, working from home. Hundreds of product specialists, our entire sales floor, human resources, business development, marketing, our legal department, computer analysts, computer programmers, web developers, policy personnel, international, all worked from home for more than a year. Idaho Falls Manufacturing, Rexburg and Knoxville Manufacturing all had to come to work every day. The same thing was true with our distribution centers. So we set up safety factors to help these hundreds of employees stay healthy, even though they were coming to work every day. They could not social distance on the manufacturing floor. We put them into pods of 3 or 4 people each, and they wore masks. If anyone in their pod got sick, the entire pod was quarantined for 2 weeks. And that happened several times. In the ensuing 12 months, some did contract the virus from the community, but because of our safety measures at work, not a single employee passed it on to another employee at work. We're really grateful for that. And even though sometimes we were a little shorthanded, because of our dedicated staff, we didn't miss a single day of production. Not one order was shipped late. Not one check was delivered to your home, even a single day late. Everything kept running just like clockwork, and our business prospered. I'm so proud and grateful for our many wonderful, dedicated employees and our management team that managed all of these tiny details and moving parts so expertly. So now we're entering a new era, an era of inflation and shortages around the world. We've learned some things over the last 18 months. We've learned that we need to be more self-reliant. We need to not only make our own products, we also need to make more of our own bottles. So now we do. We've made major investments in bottle manufacturing equipment. So now we're more ready than ever before. And we've also stocked up on inventories, a lot of inventory. We're ready for this. I'm not saying that we'll never run out of any product because it's difficult to forecast exactly where the shortages are going to be. But clearly, we're much more ready than any other company that I know of. And your neighbors are going to need us now more than ever. Let me explain what's happening around the world. Right now, today, there are over 100 ships waiting outside of Los Angeles ports to be unloaded. The ships each have thousands of containers on board. There's somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 containers waiting to be unloaded. They're full of goods, but they can't be unloaded. And the reason they can't be unloaded because there are simply not enough dock workers. And even if there were enough dock workers, there are no trucks to haul the containers away. There's not really a shortage of trucks. There's a shortage of truck drivers. The reason that there's a shortage of truck drivers is because our well-meaning government is paying truck drivers not to work. Or at least that's how the truck drivers are seeing things. These are good people who've always been willing to go to work. They've got a great work ethic, but now they're getting enough from the government through unemployment benefits and child tax credits and other subsidies that there's enough income coming into their household that they simply don't need to go to work. I recently talked to an owner of a trucking company. Just like other trucking companies, they have trucks sitting idle because they don't have enough drivers. He tells me that they're now offering between $80,000 to $90,000 a year for truck drivers. That's substantially more than they were offering just a few months ago. But the drivers are telling him, thank you for the nice offer. But candidly, although I'm making substantially less than I was when I was driving truck, I'm making less than that through unemployment, food stamps, and child tax credits. I'm making enough to get by. And for the first time in my career, I'm home with my family. You could offer me any amount, but it would not be worth it for me to get out on the road when I've got this phenomenal income coming in just for staying home. So in other words, as long as the subsidies are coming in, they're just simply not going to go back to work, no matter what you pay them. And the same goes for factory workers, restaurant workers, service workers, and the list goes on. And I don't blame them. I don't blame any of them. Not one bit. I blame the politicians on both sides of the aisle who've created this disastrous situation for our country. In August alone, over 4.3 million people quit their jobs. There are currently over 10.4 million job openings, and 7.7 million people are unemployed, and most are claiming unemployment. You would think that the 7 million unemployed people could find one of the 10 million jobs that are currently open. But that's simply not going to happen as long as the subsidies continue. And as long as the trucks are not all running, we're going to see lots of supply chain shortages everywhere in almost all industries, because all industries depend on trucks and truck drivers, and now you can't pay those drivers enough to go back to work because they've got enough to meet their needs. The issues are pretty severe. John Duffner, a Melaleuca Corporate Director 3, who makes $750,000 per year with his Melaleuca business, way to go, John, is also a farmer in North Dakota. He told us that farmers can't get parts for their tractors to harvest crops. He had a $250,000 John Deere tractor that was down for 12 months waiting for one part. All manufacturers depend on a number of different parts or ingredients to create any finished product. If you're missing just one part or one ingredient, you just can't make the final product. And even if the products get made in today's environment, you might not be able to find a truck to ship it to the stores. You see, with free enterprise, all of those things take care of themselves because entrepreneurs create companies that supply critical parts and services, creating the final product. And they know they have to do everything just right to make sure that they never run out. And it's always on time, because if they screw up the process, they'll lose the account. That's how free enterprise works. But when the government steps in, even when it has the best of intentions, everything goes downhill fast. In this case, our government, our well-meaning government, closed down companies and put restrictions on companies because of COVID. Then, because the government had put so many companies out of business, our well-meaning government decided to add trillions of dollars to the economy to make up for the fact that they've constantly had people lose their jobs. They're hoping that the subsidies would create voters who would vote them back into office. But now, with all those subsidies, millions don't need to go back to work. And truly, they have no plans to go back to work. Even many of those who are working today are also receiving some type of subsidy. Recently, I was in a meeting with a large group of individuals who all had significant six-figure incomes, and over a third of them had received substantial government checks in the last several weeks. These are very high-paid individuals getting government subsidies. They had not applied for them. They hadn't asked for them. The checks either just came in the mail, or sometimes they were deposited into their accounts by the government. I had an executive director come talk to me at our recent SELC meeting. Her parents were Canadians, not American citizens. But even they had just received a large check from the U.S. government totaling thousands of dollars. The checks just showed up. It seems like almost everyone is receiving a check from the government these days. And it's hard to figure out who is and who is not receiving money and why. But there's one thing for sure. With the trillions of dollars poured into our economy in the last several months, many have much more money than they've ever had before in their lives. And they want to buy stuff. They just don't know where to spend it. That's why the stock market is up so high, and why some of the shelves in the department stores are going empty. But the trucks aren't running to fill the shelves back up. But it's even more serious than that. Last week, John Duffner told me another alarming story. On his farm in North Dakota, John and his wife Jennifer produced large quantities of beans. They've been selling beans for the last 30 years. But this year it was different. They were told that they were not going to have their contract renewed for next year because the large national company that normally buys their beans cannot get any tin cans to put the beans in. So this year's crop will sit there in storage bins until the company can get some cans. Tin cans. That's probably the scariest story I've heard to date. I've never heard of a situation where companies can't get tin cans. That's a problem that you might hear of in some third world country, but not in America. When our country implements the same economic solutions that other countries have tried, we're going to get the same result. Last week, I was invited by Mr. Charles Schwab to join him in Aspen, Colorado, to participate in a think tank regarding the economy. I was there with about 90 other business executives. Several were investment bankers. Much of that meeting is confidential, but I can tell you that we pretty much all saw things the same way. Things are going to get much worse before they get better. My biggest concern is that the government is going to try to fix things with more subsidies, price controls, and perhaps maybe even rationing if things get that bad. The more the government tries to fix things, the worse it's going to get. In Economics 101, on your first day of class, you'll recall that you learned that supply and demand determine price. If supply goes down, price goes up. If supply goes up, price goes down. If demand goes up, price goes up. And if demand goes down, price goes down. In this scenario, we have the perfect storm. Enormous demand because everyone has more money, and shortage of supply because truckers and other employees aren't working because they have enough money. So you can imagine this situation. Let's suppose you have 60 people that want to buy a donut, and these people all have a lot of money. But let's say there are only 5 donuts. What do you think is going to happen to the price of donuts in that scenario? That's going to be the situation. That's why I think we're going to see inflation increase at a much faster rate than anyone is anticipating. For example, 6 months ago, the cost of shipping one container from Asia to the United States was $3,800. Do you want to guess what the cost is today? $22,000. From $3,800 to $22,000 in just 6 months. So here's where Melaleuca comes in. Right now, people might be telling you that they don't need any extra money because they've got so much money, they don't know what to do with it. But that will soon change because as prices increase, their income will not increase at the same rate. Soon they will see that they need more income. It won't take long. And they're going to want to have a plan B. That's where you come in. We have the solution. You need to tell them that you know how to build residual income. And don't forget, COVID's still there. People are continuing to seek to have the best immune system possible. That's also where you come in. You need to be sowing seeds today so people know where to come when they need help. Perhaps the best approach in today's economy would be something like, "Hey, Bill, things are a little crazy right now. I hope things are going well for you and your family, but with inflation and everything happening today, I just want you to know, if you ever get to a position where you might want a little extra income, I've got the solution." Recently, we met with our executive directors in Austin, Texas, for a leadership meeting we call Standing ELC. It was so great to have all of us in the same room again after so long. We had several presentations giving us the latest update on our immune system products. We had presentations by Bracken Abrams, Hank Toon, McKay Christensen, and others that explained the tremendous advantage that Melaleuca has in the marketplace in providing superior nutrients to build the most powerful immune systems. After these presentations, the room was abuzz. People felt like they were armed with powerful information, and they came up after the meeting and they asked us over and over to make those presentations available to you and to your customers. And we've done exactly that. If you want to know why Melaleuca is so well prepared for today's current situation, please go listen to each of those presentations. We're providing them on this website. And those presentations explain why we have the right products for this situation and how to take advantage of it. In the United States and Canada, Melaleuca is having the best year that we've ever had in our history. This is our time. This situation was made for us. You would be making a huge mistake if this national situation frightens you and you act like your neighbor and you stand there like a deer in the headlights waiting for this truck to smash into you. You don't have to be a victim of this economy. Take control of what you can control. We have the solution. Just like the beginning of the pandemic 18 months ago, this situation was made for us. We have both the health solution and we have the financial solution. We'll do our part. As a company, we are in a phenomenally advantageous position. We have no debt. We own all of our own factories. There's nothing that can put us out of business. We have one of the brightest management teams in the nation. We know where we're going, and we know how to get there. There's nothing that can take us out. I can't tell you that we'll never run out of anything, but just like last year, we'll find a way. We'll innovate. We'll find solutions, and we'll be there for you. And I promise you, your check will come on time every single month. If I were you, I would get to work investing my time building a strong, vibrant Melaleuca business. I would be sowing seeds every day. I would be watering the garden every day. I would tell everyone, when things get tough and you might need a little more income, we've got the solution. Now, set some time aside to watch every single video on this special page to learn why we have such an advantage. This is really powerful, educational stuff. If you're running a Melaleuca business, you need to know these things. In fact, if you just want to stay healthy, you need to know these things. If you don't already have a 3-month supply of food in your pantry, I would get out there and purchase a 3-month supply of food. You can get that done in a day. And then get busy and tell your friends, tell your neighbors, and tell your family. We have the solution.